I should have known something was off when they brought empty suitcases. They said it was for the trip, that they packed light on purpose, but I've been around long enough to know when someone is lying straight to your face. The kind of lie that smiles politely while its fingers are already unlatching drawers. Gregory never traveled light a day in his life, not even as a boy. And Sheila? Well, Sheila didn't even bother pretending to be tired from the road. She came in like she owned the place, nose up, eyes scanning the shelves like she was browsing at an estate sale. I was still standing in the doorway, my arms open for a hug that didn't come, while they moved past me into my house. My house. "You look well, Ma," Gregory said absently, already halfway through the living room. He glanced at the photo wall, the same one I've kept since Harold died, then turned away like it was nothing. They brought the kids, too. Not that I saw much of them. Melissa, 16, was on her phone from the second she stepped out of the car. The boy, little Jamie, though not so little anymore, offered a quick, "Hey, Grandma," before plopping onto the couch and putting on headphones. Not even a kiss on the cheek. I'd spent the whole morning baking. The lemon pound cake with the glaze Gregory always liked as a child, deviled eggs for Sheila. She fancied herself on a diet but could never resist them. And a big pot of beef stew. Real food. Food with history. With love. But they weren't hungry. "We grabbed something on the way," Sheila said, flipping through the mail I'd left on the console table. "Just a salad, really. Nothing heavy. I poured tea anyway, because that's what you do. When guests come to your house, even if they're your own flesh and blood, and even if they act like auditors instead of visitors, you offer them tea." The kettle was whistling when I first heard Gregory open the cabinet under the sink, the one with the old financial folders. Not locked, never was. Why should it be? I trusted him. Or I wanted to. "Just looking for some cleaning spray," he called out when he noticed me watching. "There's something sticky on the floor." Sticky. Yes. That would be the honey I spilled that morning while sweetening the tea. I'd wiped it up, but some things leave a trace, don't they? We sat for about 12 minutes in the kitchen. I timed it by the old wall clock. Harold bought it for our 25th anniversary. Gregory asked how I'd been. Sheila asked if I was still taking all those pills. I answered politely, careful not to show the flicker in my chest. I told them I felt fine, that the garden was still good for my knees, and that I'd renewed my license last month. They smiled like that was quaint. Then Sheila cleared her throat and said, "So, Ma, we've been thinking. Maybe it's time to start planning a little transition." "Transition," I repeated, as if I didn't understand. I understood just fine. "A retirement community," she said. "It's not what it used to be. The one we toured last week has a pool, an art studio, even gardening spaces." "You toured one?" I asked. She blinked, then smiled. "Just for future options." Gregory looked down at his cup. "It's about safety, Ma. You're here all alone. God forbid something happens." I looked around my kitchen, the same one I've stood in for 42 years. The clock ticked. The teacups cooled. I saw the pantry door slightly ajar. And behind it, I noticed Sheila's phone, camera lens glinting, peeking toward my spice rack. They weren't here for tea, or stew, or lemon cake. They were here for inventory. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I just folded my hands on the table and nodded slowly. "Tell me more about this place with the pool." They started with the hallway closet. It was after lunch, though no one but me had eaten. And while I was rinsing the cups in the sink, I heard the sliding of coat hangers. That slow, deliberate sound of someone going through what isn't theirs. I wiped my hands on the dish towel and stepped out quietly. Gregory had the closet doors open wide, jackets pushed aside, and was flipping through an old box labeled Holiday. Sheila stood behind him, arms crossed, eyes on the top shelf where I kept Harold's overcoat, the wool one from 1987. He wore it every Christmas, even after it lost its lining. "Looking for something?" I asked. Gregory turned, startled. "Oh, no, just checking if you needed anything cleaned out. You know, make some space." "For what?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Sheila jumped in. "When you move to the new place, Ma. Smaller closets, won't need so many coats." I looked at that box, dusty, plain, my handwriting faded from years, and realized they were tallying. What was old, what was sellable, what was worth boxing. They weren't helping. They were assessing. I said nothing. I just closed the closet doors slowly, like drawing a curtain on their performance. Later, in the living room, they moved on to the bookshelves. I've never been one to hoard, but I've kept the things that mattered. Harold's stamp albums, my old recipe books with handwritten notes in the margins, photo albums with edges worn soft from fingers. Now I watched Sheila pluck out my cookbooks and fan through them like they were receipts. "These could be digitized," she said. "For who?" I asked. "Well, you know, to keep. If the originals get misplaced during the move." There it was again. The move, already a given in their minds. Decided. I sat down in my chair, the one by the window, the cushion still sun-warmed from earlier. Jamie was still on the couch, headphones in, eyes glued to a screen. Melissa sat by the kitchen table now, scrolling and sighing loudly every few minutes, as if the air itself offended her. I'd imagined this visit so differently. In my mind, we'd sit in the garden. Maybe Melissa would ask about the old roses, or Jamie would want to see the attic where Gregory kept his model trains. I'd show them the tin of old coins Harold left, tell them stories. I thought maybe they'd ask to bake something, like Gregory used to when he was small. He once cracked 12 eggs on the floor just to make sure he got it right. But they weren't curious. They weren't children anymore, and they weren't mine, not in the way they used to be. "Ma," Gregory said that afternoon, sitting across from me, suddenly too casual. "Do you still have your will?" I looked at him, slowly. "I do." "Just wondering," he said, avoiding my eyes. "Might be time to update it. Things change, right?" I nodded. "Yes, they do." "You know," Sheila added, not missing a beat, "these days, it's good to have someone help with finances, especially with your health." I tilted my head. "What about my health?" "Oh, nothing serious," she said too quickly. "Just, you know, memory can get a little fuzzy. Like last time, when you forgot that we were coming." I hadn't forgotten. They told me 2 days before, vague as fog. No details, no dates, just a "we'll drop by next week." And then they'd shown up Friday morning like it was a surprise party. But I didn't argue. Not yet. That evening, I went to my room and closed the door. They assumed I was resting. I watched them through the narrow hallway mirror. Gregory opening the file drawer by the old desk. Sheila flipping through my insurance papers like a librarian in a rush. I didn't stop them. Let them look. Let them dig. Let them think I'm fragile. Because while they were poking through my past, I was planning my next step. I woke before all of them. Old habit. My bones start humming at dawn whether I like it or not. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet I used to cherish. Soft, lived in, honest. But that morning, it felt like a held breath, like the walls were waiting to see what I would do. I made coffee the way Harold liked it, strong enough to scold you with just a touch of sugar. I let it fill the kitchen with its warm, bitter scent. For a moment, I almost forgot I had guests who weren't really guests at all. When I stepped into the hallway, I found Sheila already awake, sitting on the stairs with her laptop open. She didn't even look up. "Morning," she said, typing fast. "I'm just comparing senior communities. Some have great fall prevention programs." "Fall prevention," I repeated. "Do you expect me to start throwing myself down the stairs for fun?" She glanced at me the way people do when they decide you're being difficult. "We're just looking out for you, Ma." They always call you Ma when they're about to take something from you, when they want agreement, compliance, surrender. Before I could answer, Gregory came down, rubbing his eyes, hair sticking up on one side. He used to wake up like that as a boy, soft, rumpled, sweet. Now he looked like a man carrying a secret that wasn't sitting well in his stomach. "Ma," he said, "we should talk about something important." There it was, the tone, the one people use before announcing a move, a sale, a diagnosis, the tone of someone who thinks he knows what's best for you. "Go ahead," I said. "We're concerned," he began. "This house is old. You're here by yourself. It's too much to maintain. We've found a place closer to us. A really nice one. Safe, clean, staff on site." I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Sounds expensive." "It's manageable," he said. "For who?" He didn't answer. Sheila closed her laptop and stood up, taking over like she always did. "Ma, we're trying to help. You shouldn't be cooking alone or climbing on stools for things or dealing with bills. A retirement community would take all of that off your plate." "Would it?" I murmured. Gregory nodded eagerly, relieved she'd said the words for him. "And they handle medications, too." "Medications?" I asked. "Which ones?" "I take 3. Same 3 for 10 years. He shifted, suddenly unsure. "Just everything. It's safer." There it was. Safer. That word people love to use when they want control over something that isn't theirs. My whole life I'd kept things safe. Our home, our finances, the family dinners, the birthdays he never missed as a child and always forgot as a man. Safety was the one thing I'd provided without ever being asked. And now they thought they were the ones offering it to me. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a thin blue folder. "We talked to the director yesterday. There's an opening. We could reserve it today. It won't stay open long." "Yesterday?" I asked. "Before you came here?" They exchanged a quick look. A guilty one. A rehearsed one. Sheila smiled too brightly. "It was just research." "Did you drive here to ask me?" I asked softly. "Or to tell me?" Gregory sat beside me at the kitchen table like he used to when he needed help with homework. But he wasn't asking for help. He was asking for my life. "Ma, please, don't make this harder than it has to be." Harder for who? There was a moment, so small you could miss it, when he reached for my hand. The same hand I used to hold crossing the street. The same hand he clung to on his first day of school. I let him touch my fingers but didn't close mine around his. "Let's be practical," he said. "You can't stay here forever." I smiled then, a slow, tired smile that surprised even me. "Gregory," I said, "I can stay here exactly as long as I decide to." Before he could answer, Jamie thundered down the stairs, earbuds dangling. "Dad, Mom, can we go today? Grandma's Wi-Fi sucks." Sheila sighed dramatically. "Jamie, language." He shrugged, grabbing cereal directly from the box. "Whatever. This place is old." I watched them all in that moment, their impatience, their assumptions, their tidy plans, and I felt something inside me settle. a quiet, steadying weight, like a stone dropping into place. They weren't here to ask. They were here to take. But they had no idea I still remembered how to say no. After breakfast, Sheila asked to help me sort through the papers. Her voice was light, sweet even, like she was offering to fold laundry. But I knew what she meant. Not bills, not recipes. She meant the thick brown envelope I kept in the back of the linen drawer, the one with the house deed, Harold's life insurance, my will, and the power of attorney I'd signed 15 years ago when Gregory had his first health scare and insisted it was just a precaution. I made a quiet note. That power of attorney needed revoking. Immediately. "Oh, it's all a mess," I said, putting on my reading glasses for effect. "I wouldn't know where to start." "That's what I'm here for," Sheila replied, already standing up. I led her to the guest room instead, made sure the door creaked just enough to let me know if she went snooping later, and pulled out a dusty box of old church newsletters, birthday cards, and grocery receipts from 2004. She smiled tightly, pretended not to notice, and dug in with the false enthusiasm of someone forced to fake sentiment. Gregory, meanwhile, was on the phone most of the morning. Low voice, walking back and forth on the porch. I heard snippets. "Yes, we'd like to begin the application. Her age is 77. She's still mobile. No dementia, but she's forgetful." That last one stung more than I expected. Forgetful? I remember the exact date Harold proposed, May 12, 1968. I remember the smell of the kitchen the day Gregory took his first steps. I remember where every cent is in my bank accounts and where I stashed the emergency cash under the sugar tin. What I don't remember is raising a son who could lie with such ease. By lunchtime, I was tired of pretending. I put on my coat and said I needed to run an errand. Medicine, I claimed. Sheila offered to come with me. "I'll manage," I said firmly. She hesitated. I saw the flicker of calculation. They didn't want me going anywhere unsupervised, not until they had signatures. But I walked out anyway. My keys were still mine. I didn't go to the pharmacy. I went to the lawyer. Mr. Harrow's office hadn't changed in 30 years. Same crooked blinds, same receptionist who wore her lipstick like armor. He'd helped Harold and me with the will, the house title, all of it. When I walked in, he stood to greet me like someone standing up in church. No one does that anymore. "Mrs. Harrison," he said, "it's been too long." I sat down without small talk. "I need to revoke a power of attorney and revise my will." He blinked, then nodded slowly. "Understood." "I'd also like to establish a trust," I added, "and make sure it's ironclad." "May I ask what prompted?" "My son came to visit," I said, "with suitcases and a pen." He didn't ask anything else. We went through the documents one by one. I updated the will to name no specific heirs, just one irrevocable trust to protect the house, my savings, and the small pension I'd never touched. I appointed a local accountant, unrelated, with no emotional agenda, as executor. As for Gregory and Sheila, I left them nothing, not out of cruelty, but because you don't reward people for showing up only when they smell ownership. By the time I returned home, the sky had gone soft with late afternoon light. I found Gregory at the dining table with a stack of papers spread out like a game of Monopoly. He looked up, visibly annoyed. "Where were you?" "Out," I said, hanging up my coat. "We needed to go over the forms. The director said the opening might not last past tomorrow." "Good," I replied. "Then you won't waste your time." He frowned. "What does that mean?" I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and took a long sip before answering. It means I'm not going anywhere. Sheila appeared in the doorway, holding one of the fake boxes she'd organized earlier. We're only trying to help, Ma. I know, I said quietly. That's what makes it worse. That evening, I opened the drawer I hadn't touched in years, the bottom left one in my bedroom dresser. It sticks a little. You have to know just how to pull and lift at the same time. Inside was a shallow box lined with worn velvet, where I kept things not valuable to anyone else, but precious to me. Harold's old watch, the gold-plated one with the engraving. A dried rose from our 30th anniversary. And tucked beneath it all, the small metal cash box. I'd once told Gregory it held only sewing supplies. It didn't. Inside were 3 neatly folded envelopes, one with small bills for emergencies, one with a bank letter confirming the CD I opened in my maiden name years ago, and one with a list of passwords handwritten in pen. I'd added that part after seeing how people were locked out of their lives the moment they forgot a login. You forget one thing, and the world moves on without you. But I remembered everything. I took the cash, slipped it into my purse, and locked the drawer again. Not because I didn't trust them, I already didn't, but because it was mine. The next morning, Sheila was already in the kitchen, brewing some awful green tea she insisted was good for inflammation. I smiled politely and made a proper pot of coffee. She watched me, her smile too tight. "You're up early," she said. "I always am." Gregory came down a few minutes later, dressed a little too neatly for a casual visit. I knew that look. The same look he wore when he was trying to get approved for his first loan. "Ma," he said, "we thought we might go over the financial stuff today. Help you simplify." "Simplify," I repeated. Sheila nodded, opening her tablet. "You've got accounts at 2 different banks, credit cards, utility bills. It's too much. We can consolidate. Maybe even put you on a monthly allowance." That word, allowance, landed hard. "I'm 77, Sheila, not 17. She blinked. "Of course, I didn't mean just to make things easier." "For whom?" I asked again. They exchanged a glance. "I've handled my money just fine for over 5 decades, I said. "I paid off this house by hand, raised Gregory through a recession, took care of Harold until the very end. If it's too much for you to follow, that's not my problem." Gregory exhaled, clearly losing patience. "We're not trying to fight, Ma. We're trying to plan. You always said you didn't want to be a burden." I smiled. "And I'm not. Not to myself." He walked away without another word. Sheila lingered. "You're being emotional." "No," I said, setting down my cup. "I'm being very, very clear." Later that day, I caught Melissa trying to open my bedroom door. She startled when I asked if she needed something, mumbled something about looking for a charger. I told her all the outlets in the house were downstairs. She didn't argue. Jamie kept asking about the Wi-Fi password. I gave it to him, then changed it an hour later. That night, while they watched television, I sat at my desk and wrote out everything: new will, new power of attorney, new executor. I wrote a letter, too, addressed to Gregory, folded it, taped it shut, left it in the safe with a note that read, "Only open if I'm gone." I wasn't planning to go anywhere, but I wanted him to know. I wasn't afraid. Let them count their inventories. Measure the curtains. Stare at the value of my life like it's just another item on a spreadsheet. Let them try. They came to take control. They forgot I'd never given it. I don't remember when exactly Gregory stopped being my son and started being someone I had to protect myself from. There wasn't one moment. No slam of a door, no final phone call. Just the slow erosion that happens when someone chooses distance again and again until the gap becomes normal, until silence feels safer than talking. It probably started after Harold died. That was 16 years ago. Gregory came around at first, brought groceries, checked in on the water heater, even mowed the lawn once. But little by little, the visits got shorter. Then came the excuses. Then came nothing. I told myself he was busy. His job was demanding. The kids were growing. Life, I said. It pulls everyone in different directions. But the truth is, when someone wants to be near you, they make it happen. And when they don't, they find reasons not to. He never said he was ashamed of me, but he didn't have to. He'd come by with new friends from the city, and I'd see how quickly he changed, suddenly speaking softer, straighter, like his own voice embarrassed him in my living room. He'd laugh at my wallpaper, joke about the way I still use a landline. And Sheila, she never laughed. She didn't need to. Her silence was sharp enough. They visited on holidays, and only when I asked. They brought pre-cut fruit trays and overpriced wine I never drank. They smiled for pictures, then left before the dishes were done. And every time they left, I'd tell myself at least they came. But I see it clearly now. They weren't coming out of love. They were checking boxes. I thought this visit was different. I told myself not to expect anything, and still. I baked, I polished silver, I laid out fresh linens. Because some part of me still wanted to believe I mattered, not what I owned. Me. Today, I found a folded piece of paper in the guest room trash. It was a brochure. Golden Sycamore Retirement Living. My name was circled in blue pen. Under it, fall risk. Stubborn. Requires oversight. Stubborn. They use that word when you refuse to roll over. Later, Gregory tried again. Sat beside me with his politician's tone, the one he uses when he wants something to sound like it's for your good. Sheila and I have been thinking, he began. When we get back, we could help manage the property. Hire someone to maintain it. Maybe even rent it out while you... While I what? I asked. He blinked. While you get settled, somewhere safer, smaller. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a prelude. I'm settled, I said. I've been settled since 1982. He chuckled, like I'd made a quaint joke. Ma, this house is falling apart. Funny, I said. It never squeaks when you're counting the square footage. He stood up, flustered. You're being impossible. No, I was being inconvenient. There's a difference. They want me to surrender with grace, to hand over keys and papers like parting gifts, to sign the dotted lines with a grateful smile. They want the transfer to be clean, silent, dignified. But I'm not giving them that luxury. That night, I opened the kitchen window and let the cold air in. Just stood there, breathing. The sky was full of stars, the kind city people forget are real. Somewhere in the house, Jamie was laughing at a video. Melissa was whining about reception. Gregory and Sheila were behind a closed door, speaking low, calculating. And me? I was still here, in my house, with my name on every document. And not one of them could change that without my hand. The call came just after lunch, from an unfamiliar number. Normally, I don't answer numbers I don't recognize. Too many scams nowadays. But something in me, it wasn't curiosity, it was something heavier, made me press the green button. Mrs. Harrison? A male voice asked. Yes. This is Tyler Reed from Western Community Bank. I'm calling regarding a verification request on your checking account. I sat down slowly at the kitchen table. A request? Yes, ma'am. Someone attempted to access recent activity and requested confirmation for upcoming transfers tied to a property management service. Just routine, of course. We always double-check when a third party is listed on the account and the primary holder hasn't called us directly. Who was the third party? I asked. There was a pause. I'm only permitted to confirm this if you authorize the disclosure, ma'am. I'm authorizing it. Understood. The name provided was Gregory Harrison, relation marked as son with financial power of attorney. I felt my pulse harden, not race, just tighten, like a string pulled taut. I've revoked that power, I said quietly. As of yesterday morning. It was officially filed and witnessed. I see, Tyler replied, and I could hear him typing. Yes, it appears the revocation paperwork came through this morning from Harrow and Associates. That takes precedence. Thank you for confirming. Was anything changed on my account? No, ma'am. We halted the inquiry until confirmation. Nothing was processed. Good. After we hung up, I sat very still for a long time. They weren't waiting. They were moving forward. Gregory had tried to access my finances like it was already done, already agreed. Like I was a formality, not a person. I got up, walked to the front door, and locked it. Not for safety, but for certainty. For the small satisfaction of hearing the bolt slide into place. They think I'm old and alone, but they forget I've lived more life in this house than they've known outside of it. Every floorboard has heard my footsteps. Every drawer remembers my touch. Later that afternoon, I called Harrow's office to confirm the bank had what they needed. Yes, Mrs. Harrison, his assistant said. We've finalized the revocation of power of attorney and filed the new trust documents. The house and liquid assets are now legally secured under your sole control. No one can make financial decisions on your behalf without your signed consent. Thank you, I said. We'll also mail you certified copies for your records. And just to be clear, if anyone attempts to contest or act on your behalf, it will trigger a legal notification. Good, I said again, and meant it. That night, I didn't speak much at dinner. Melissa complained about the potatoes being too real, and Jamie asked if we had any Wi-Fi boosters. Gregory looked at his phone half the time. Sheila talked about how tired she was from helping around the house. I let them talk. Let them eat my food. Let them sit under my roof. But I no longer saw them as visitors. I saw them as people who had made a decision, and I had made mine. When dinner was done, I washed the dishes slowly. The hot water scalded just enough to remind me I was still here, still choosing, still standing. Let them plan. Let them push. I had fortified every wall they didn't see, and they would find out soon enough that I wasn't something to be managed. I was someone they underestimated. The next morning, I saw Violet standing by her mailbox, arms crossed, cardigan sleeves pushed up despite the cold. She waved when she saw me. Not a polite wave, an I've seen something wave. I walked down the porch steps, tucking my keys into my pocket. Violet had lived 2 houses down for 37 years, former high school English teacher, widowed twice, sharp as vinegar. They're still here? She asked without preamble. I nodded. She smirked. Let me guess. Full of smiles, offering help, checking the attic for raccoons that don't exist? They checked the basement yesterday, I said. Claimed they were looking for old paint cans. She tilted her head. And found your filing cabinet instead? I didn't answer. She didn't need me to. I've seen this before, Violet said, voice low. They show up like it's a reunion, but their eyes go straight to the furniture. like they're scanning the room for things that'll soon be theirs. I said nothing. Not because I disagreed, but because I finally realized I wasn't imagining it. I'd spent days telling myself I might be misreading them, that maybe I was too suspicious, that maybe I was the one drawing conclusions too quickly. But hearing Violet say it, plainly, unapologetically, made the shape of their visit snap into focus. "They ask you about doctors yet?" she added. "First day. And the will?" I nodded. She squinted toward my house. "You got your documents in order?" "I do now," she smiled. "Good girl." It wasn't condescending. It felt like solidarity. Back at the porch, I hesitated before going inside. The door was closed, but I could already hear voices behind it. Gregory was on a call again. Sheila was probably scrolling on that tablet of hers, drafting emails titled "Next Steps." I didn't go in right away. Instead, I sat on the porch swing. Let the wood creak beneath me, the cold seep into my knees. Across the street, a maple tree was dropping the last of its leaves. Yellow and red like embers, they fell without sound, one after another. This house had weathered every season with me, held me through loss, through loneliness, through joy, too. And now it was holding me steady as I faced down my own blood. Not enemies. Worse. People who used to love me, now wanting to manage me. I sat there for a long time, watching the tree. And in that stillness, something inside me shifted. Not bitterness. Not revenge. Just clarity. This wasn't about holding on to the house, or the money, or the drawer full of passwords. It was about not disappearing while I was still alive. About saying, "I am still here." I opened the door finally, walked back in. Gregory looked up from the living room. "You okay?" he asked like I was fragile. I nodded. I didn't tell him where I'd been or what Violet said. Some truths don't need to be announced. Some are best revealed by action, and mine were just beginning. Mr. Harrow called me just before noon. I was in the middle of refolding towels that didn't need folding, anything to keep my hands busy, when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. But something in my stomach twisted, and I knew this call wasn't one I should let go to voicemail. "Mrs. Harrison," he said, his voice more serious than usual. "You asked me to alert you if any inquiries or motions were made regarding your estate or property." "Yes," I said, sitting down. "Well, one just came through. A preliminary inquiry from a law firm in Fairgrove, Linton and Pike. They were requesting verification of your mental competency and your current legal status as primary decision-maker for your estate." My hand gripped the armrest. "Who contacted them?" I asked. He didn't pause. "Gregory Harrison." He referred to himself as your primary contact and noted that he believed a transition of authority was in process. "He what?" Harrow's voice softened. "They were asking about conservatorship guidelines, Mrs. Harrison." I closed my eyes. Conservatorship. The word hit like cold water down the back of my neck. They weren't just trying to talk me into moving anymore. They were trying to build a case that I couldn't manage myself. They wanted legal control. "I've already revoked the power of attorney," I said. "Correct. And the trust protects your assets. But you should know, attempting to initiate conservatorship without your knowledge is rare, but not unheard of. They'd need to demonstrate diminished capacity." "They'll have a hard time with that," I said flatly. "I'm sure they will," he replied. "But I'd still recommend we prepare a formal letter of objection, and perhaps a physician's statement of competence, if you're comfortable with that." I nodded, then realized he couldn't see me. "Yes, let's do that. I'll email the documents today." "Thank you," I said. I hung up and sat still, letting the silence soak in. It wasn't a theory anymore. It wasn't suspicion. It was confirmed. Gregory had gone from circling to striking. They'd already decided I couldn't be trusted with my own life, and worse, they were trying to prove it. Later that day, I asked Gregory if he'd like to walk to the post office with me. It was a mild afternoon. I watched him do the mental math, how to say no without sounding rude. He sighed. Sure. We walked slowly, past Mrs. Dudley's old blue hydrangeas and the house where Harold once fixed a broken porch for a neighbor we barely knew. I talked about nothing. He responded in clipped tones. When we reached the mailbox, I stopped and looked at him. I spoke with my lawyer today, I said. He tensed. I know about the inquiry, Linton and Pike, conservatorship. He didn't respond at first, just looked at the sidewalk. I thought you'd be relieved, he said finally. It's not personal, Ma. Things have been difficult. You've seemed scattered. You mean I didn't do what you wanted, I said. It's about safety. No, I said. It's about control. You want my house, my name, my accounts, my decisions. Wrapped up in a neat little folder you can carry off like a souvenir. That's not fair, isn't it? He shifted. You've always done everything yourself, and I get that. But things change. They do, I agreed. Like sons who forget their mothers are still people. He didn't speak. I turned and started walking back. He didn't follow at first. But after a few seconds, I heard his footsteps behind me. That night, I wrote everything down in a notebook. Dates, calls, names, the brochure, the inquiry. I wasn't scared. I was building a record. And they would learn. This house has stood for decades through storms and stillness. And so have I. The confirmation letter came in the afternoon mail. It was tucked between a coupon flyer and a charity appeal envelope, addressed not to me, but to Gregory Harrison. My address, his name. A quiet insult wrapped in a plain white envelope. I opened it because it was my house, my mailbox, my name still on every utility bill and deed. I opened it because I had a right to know what was being decided on my behalf. Inside was a single sheet, folded neatly, printed on expensive paper. Dear Mr. Harrison, it read, we are pleased to confirm the reservation of a private unit at Willow Hills Assisted Living for your mother, Mrs. May Harrison. The requested room has been held for the dates you specified, with intake scheduled for next Tuesday at 10 a.m. There was more, about payment plans, move-in services, on-site staff. I didn't finish reading. My hands didn't shake. They didn't need to, because something colder had settled into my chest. Something past hurt. It was clarity, a clean, sharp edge of it. He'd already booked the room, not discussed, not suggested. Booked. They weren't waiting for my yes. They were planning for my absence. I placed the letter back in its envelope, folded it carefully, and slid it into the pocket of my cardigan. Then I walked down the hall and knocked on the guest room door. Gregory answered with the look of a man caught stealing, but still hoping to explain why it was somehow yours he was entitled to take. I got your mail by mistake, I said, holding it up. He stared at it, but didn't reach for it. Ma, I was going to tell you. Next Tuesday at 10 a.m., I read. That's efficient. He opened his mouth, but I held up my hand. Tell me this. Was I supposed to find out before or after the car arrived to take me away? He ran a hand through his hair. It's not like that. Then how is it, Gregory? Sheila and I... Stop, I said. Sheila and you do not get to decide where I live. You do not get to fill out forms with my name and forget to tell me. You do not get to steal my choices and call it protection." He looked like he wanted to argue. He didn't. Maybe he knew I wouldn't let him. "It's just a room," he said quietly. "We thought maybe if you saw it, you'd understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said. "You didn't book a visit. You scheduled a surrender." "It's not like that," he repeated, softer now. "Don't lie," I said, and he flinched. Not from volume, but from finality. I turned and left the room. The envelope was still in my hand. In the kitchen, I found Jamie pouring cereal, still wearing headphones. "Do you know what your father's trying to do?" I asked. He blinked. Is this about the internet again?" "No," I said. "This is about a life. Mine." He shrugged and went back to his cereal. Not out of cruelty, just the blank indifference of someone raised in a world where old people are background noise. Back in my bedroom, I sat down at my desk and pulled out a fresh piece of stationery. I wrote a letter, not for Gregory, not for Sheila, for Violet. I told her what happened. Told her I might need her as a witness if it came to that. Asked if she could recommend a physician, someone who didn't work out of a clinic tied to insurance companies or elder care facilities. Then I folded the letter, addressed it, and placed it by the door. When I came out again, Sheila was in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear. She lowered it when she saw me. "There's still time to reconsider," she said. "We can cancel the reservation. But they need to know by tomorrow or—" "I won't be the one calling them," I said. "You will." "I just think I'm not interested in what you think." Her face changed then, just for a moment. The mask slipped. I saw the frustration, the contempt, the unspoken. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." And maybe I was. But that was the point. Let them call the place. Let them explain that the woman they'd already signed over was still very much alive and not going anywhere. They came here to remove me from my home. Instead, I was removing their illusions. And I would do it piece by piece, calmly, until there was nothing left for them to claim but silence. They waited until after dinner. Maybe they thought I'd be too tired to argue. Maybe they thought a warm meal would soften me. Or maybe they thought they still had control. But they misjudged one thing. This wasn't a conversation. This was the reckoning. I was finishing the dishes when Gregory cleared his throat behind me. "Ma, do you have a minute?" I didn't turn around right away. I dried my hands carefully, folded the towel, then faced them both. Him standing, arms crossed. Sheila perched on the edge of the sofa, all concerned performance. "We just want to talk," Sheila said. "Then talk," I replied. Gregory stepped forward, voice calm, practiced. "We understand that you're upset. The letter, the room. We should have handled it better. You should have asked," I said. "We were going to—" "You didn't," I cut in. "You made a decision. You wrote my name on a contract. You spoke to strangers about my health, my finances, my future, all without including me." "It wasn't meant to be secretive," he said. I laughed then, quietly, bitterly. "You filed conservatorship inquiries behind my back, Gregory. You called me forgetful in legal documents. Do you even hear yourself?" Sheila leaned forward. "We weren't trying to steal anything. We were just trying to prevent problems before they happen." "What problems?" I asked. She hesitated. "Well, the house is old. You're alone. What if something happens?" I took a step closer, my voice still even. "Let me explain something to you. I've lived alone in this house for 16 years. I've survived storms, power outages, a broken hip, and 2 winters without central heating. Do you know what I didn't survive? They said nothing. Being erased by my own family, while still alive and capable. Gregory opened his mouth, then shut it. I've redone my will, I said. Revoked every authorization with your name on it. Created a trust. Contacted legal counsel. All my assets are now locked under protections neither of you can bypass. Ma. Gregory's voice faltered. Don't ma me now. That word doesn't mean what it used to. Not when you've used it to forge plans around me. Sheila crossed her arms. So what then? You want to just stay here until you drop? Wait for something terrible to happen and hope someone finds you in time. I smiled, sharp and cold. That's better than living surrounded by people who see me as a liability instead of a person. Gregory's face was tight, embarrassed, like a child caught lying. We just wanted to help. No, I said. You wanted to take over. There's a difference. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Sheila stood up. Fine, we get it. You've made your choice. But don't expect us to clean up the mess when things fall apart. I raised an eyebrow. You mean like the mess you tried to make of my life? She flinched, then looked away. Gregory looked like he wanted to say something kind, something that would wrap this all up in a ribbon of false reconciliation. But nothing came. I'll call the retirement place tomorrow, he said quietly. Cancel the reservation. Good, I said. Tell them I said hello. Sheila turned and walked toward the guest room. Gregory lingered a moment longer. Is this really what you want? He asked. It's what I've already done, I replied. He nodded slowly. Then followed his wife down the hall. I stood there in the quiet afterward, my hands resting on the back of a chair. It hadn't felt triumphant. There was no applause, no great surge of satisfaction, just silence, and a kind of steady peace that only comes when you've spoken every truth you've been swallowing for years. They hadn't expected resistance. They'd forgotten who raised them. They'd forgotten who built everything they stood on. And now they'd have to remember. The next morning, I walked into Harrow and Associates with my chin lifted and my papers in hand. It was raining lightly, enough to dampen the hem of my coat, not enough to matter. I didn't bother with an umbrella. There was something bracing in feeling the rain on my face. Something alive. The receptionist recognized me. She stood when I entered. Mrs. Harrison, Mr. Harrow is expecting you. He greeted me at the door of his office like I was someone important. Not a favor, not a burden, a client. A woman with a voice that still carried weight. I've reviewed everything, he said as we sat. It's clear, strong, and legally airtight. But if you want to add anything, I do, I said, setting a folded letter on his desk. He opened it gently. I want to make the trust irrevocable, I said. With an addendum. If any party attempts to alter or challenge the terms after my death, the full contents pass to the secondary beneficiary. He looked up. And that would be? The local public library, I said. Specifically, the Building Maintenance Fund. I already called the director. They said it would go toward replacing their broken heating system. Harrow smiled. That's specific. It's intentional, I said. I want it on record that if anyone tries to wring something from me once I'm gone, they'll end up fixing radiators instead. He nodded, amused but respectful. Consider it done. He walked me through the revisions, the will, the trust, the power of attorney, this time given only to a fiduciary with no personal stake. Every document bore my full name, spelled clearly, signed with a steady hand. I initialed each page slowly, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted every mark to be deliberate. This wasn't an act of defiance. It was an act of ownership. I had been slowly written out of the story of my own life. Now, I was writing myself back in. After the final signature, Harrow handed me a thick envelope, copies of every document. "Keep these somewhere safe," he said. "And if they approach you again, they won't," I said. "Not after this." When I stepped out of the office, the rain had stopped. The air smelled of wet pavement and lilacs from the planter box near the bus stop. It reminded me of Sundays when Harold and I would walk home from church in silence, not out of awkwardness, but out of comfort. That kind of quiet I hadn't felt in years. I stopped at the grocery store on the way home, bought a roast, some carrots, and fresh thyme. Not because I expected anyone to eat it with me, but because it was the kind of meal you make when you're living your life, not waiting to be moved through it like furniture. At home, I put the envelope in the safe, along with the handwritten letter to Gregory I'd prepared earlier, the one marked, "Only open if I'm gone." I kept the new will and trust documents in a second copy, tucked inside a manila folder labeled for Violet, just in case. Then I went outside, sat on the back steps, and watched the garden. The roses needed pruning. The basil was going to seed. The fence needed repainting. It was all mine, not just the property. The choice. The breath. The quiet. They had tried to manage me like a fragile thing. But I wasn't fragile. I was deliberate. When Gregory and Sheila left the next morning, they didn't say much. 2 suitcases, short hugs. Melissa didn't look up from her phone. Jamie grunted a goodbye. I waved, not with spite, with completion. Gregory lingered on the porch. "I guess we'll let you be," he said. "I've always been," I replied. He nodded once, eyes tired. "We just wanted to help." "No," I said gently. "You wanted to be in control. That's not the same." He didn't argue. He walked to the car, and I went back inside, closed the door, and locked it. Not out of fear, but out of knowing it was mine to lock. For the first time in weeks, I made tea without listening for footsteps in the hall. The house breathed differently, not because it was empty, because it was free. And so was I. The house felt like it was already letting go of them. You can sense it when people are about to leave. The way the air changes. The way their things stop blending into the room and start looking like luggage again. The toothbrush lying loose on the sink instead of in the cup. The shoes by the door turned outward. The sound of drawers closing for the last time. They were leaving in the morning. That much was said, flatly, over dinner. No more speeches. No more persuasion. Just a heavy, unsaid agreement that nothing had gone to plan. For them. We ate quietly. I made roast with carrots, the way I always have. Gregory barely touched his plate. Sheila picked at the salad. The children, if you could still call them that, scrolled and sighed and muttered. I didn't speak. What was left to say? They'd come to claim something they thought was theirs. Instead, they were leaving with nothing but their own silence. After dinner, I washed the dishes alone. No one offered to help. That was fine. I liked the sound of the water, the clink of ceramic, the soft weight of the towel in my hand. I've always done things like this without praise. There's peace in small, necessary tasks. They remind you who you are. In the living room, the television was on, but no one watched it. Melissa lay curled up in the armchair, thumb flicking endlessly across her screen. Jamie sat on the floor with headphones in, laughing at something I would never hear. Sheila sat stiffly, scrolling through emails. Every now and then, She looked up as if expecting me to say something. I didn't. Gregory stood near the mantel, where the old clock ticked steadily. He looked at the photographs, my wedding picture, Harold in his uniform, a snapshot of Gregory as a boy holding a kite on the beach. His eyes rested on that one longer than the others. "I used to love that day," he said, not looking at me. I dried my hands. He turned toward me. "You remember? I let the kite go by accident. You walked all the way down the shore to find it." I nodded. "You cried the whole time." He smiled faintly. "I was scared it was gone forever." I looked at him for a long moment. "And I told you, what matters doesn't get lost that easily." He didn't reply. Later, when the kids had gone to bed and Sheila was packing in the guest room, Gregory stepped into the kitchen. The overhead light made him look older than I remembered. "I know this didn't go how you wanted," he said, "but I wasn't trying to hurt you." "I know," I said. "We thought we were doing the right thing." "No," I said. "You thought you could decide what the right thing was. That's not the same." He nodded, tired. "Maybe." "I raised you better than this," I added. "Not as an insult, as a fact." He rubbed the back of his neck like he used to do when he got in trouble at school. "I don't know what happens next," he said. "You go home," I replied, "and I stay here." He laughed under his breath. "Simple as that?" It always was. He looked around the kitchen, eyes softening. "You're really going to stay in this house alone?" "I've been alone a long time, Gregory. You just didn't notice." He swallowed hard. "Will you call if you ever need anything?" I thought about it. Then I said, "If I need something, I'll figure it out. Like I always have." He didn't argue, didn't press. Just nodded slowly, like he finally believed me. He left the room without another word. I stood there for a while after he was gone. The kitchen was clean, the table empty. Outside, the wind had picked up, brushing leaves against the windows in soft, restless patterns. I boiled a fresh pot of water, made myself a cup of tea, and brought it to the back room, the small one where Harold used to read the paper every morning. I sat in his chair, looked out the window, sipped quietly, and let the last night of their visit pass like a cloud, drifting, empty, and no longer mine to carry. They were gone by 8. No long goodbyes, no hugs at the car. Just a trunk slammed shut, a few bags loaded, murmured directions from Sheila, and the sound of the engine starting. I watched from the kitchen window, hands wrapped around a warm mug, not waving, just observing. Gregory looked back once from the passenger seat. I couldn't see his expression, and I didn't try to guess. When the car disappeared down the street, the house let out a breath I hadn't realized it was holding. The kind of breath you take after guests leave and the silence returns, not heavy this time, but clear, like something had been lifted. I made a list that morning. It's what you do after a storm. You assess, not the damage, there was none, just the space, the clarity, the freedom to move again. First, laundry. Sheets from the guest room, towels, pillowcases. I stripped the beds and opened the windows. Let the cold in. Let the air change. Second, kitchen. I threw out the cereal no one ate, wiped down the counters, rearranged the spice rack back the way I liked it, reclaimed the space from their hands. Third, the drawer. The one in the hallway they'd opened without asking. I placed a fresh label on it. Private. Please ask before entering. It wasn't for them. It was for me. I spent the afternoon pruning the front rose bushes. The ground was still soft from last night's rain. I knelt slowly, one hand bracing the edge of the garden bed, the other snipping away the dry stems. I worked without rush, without noise, without commentary. Just the birds and the low hum of distant traffic. Around 4, Violet walked by. She didn't say anything at first, just stood at the edge of the sidewalk, watching me with that sharp little smile of hers. "Looks better already," she said finally. I stood, brushing dirt from my knees. "Feels better." "Did they go quietly?" "As quietly as they came." She nodded. "You know, not everyone would have handled it like you did. Most wouldn't have needed to." She tilted her head. "You sure you don't want me to tell Linda at the clinic to get your file updated? Just in case they try again?" "I've already sent it myself," I said, "with notarized documents, copied twice." "Good girl," she said again. And again, it didn't feel condescending. That evening, I made soup. Lentil, with garlic and thyme. Simple, grounding. I let it simmer while I played the radio. Old jazz, nothing fancy. I set the table for one, folded the napkin the way I used to when Harold was alive. I didn't feel lonely. I felt rightful. I ate slowly, tasting everything. Let the stillness settle, not like an absence, but like a presence of myself, uninterrupted. The windows fogged gently. The lamp cast a warm light across the room. The clock ticked. No one asked about retirement homes. No one hovered behind me while I unlocked the mail drawer. No one asked if I'd remembered my pills. I remembered. I remembered all of it. After dinner, I sat by the fire with a book I'd been meaning to start for months. I didn't rush the pages. I let the silence read along with me. Later, I walked the house, checked each room, not out of fear, but out of ownership. This was my space, my history, my future too. I stood at the foot of the stairs, one hand on the banister. They had tried to write me off, not because I was failing, but because they had stopped seeing me as real. But I was still here, with hands strong enough to lift a shovel, with legs firm enough to climb stairs, with a voice steady enough to say no and mean it. That night, I slept with the windows cracked open. The cold air crept in, and I welcomed it. It didn't chill me. It reminded me I was alive. Sometimes, in the early hours before light touches the curtains, I lie still and listen to the house. It creaks differently now, not with strain, but with memory. Like it knows I chose it again, like it's settled into itself the way I have. There's peace in that, a quiet kind. Some mornings I rise before the sun, make tea, and sit on the back steps with a blanket over my knees. The garden is softest then. The basil's gone, but the rosemary clings on. The air smells like earth, like something beginning even when everything else is ending. The days are mine again, not just to survive, but to shape. I've started doing small things I'd forgotten I enjoyed. I bake bread on Sundays now, slow, with my hands, not a machine. I sort through the old photos not to label or digitize them, but to remember, to laugh. Sometimes I write names on the back. Sometimes I don't. It doesn't matter if no one knows the stories later. I know them now. I joined the community center again, just on Tuesdays. They have a group that meets for quiet stitching, which mostly turns into talking. Real talking. Not polite exchanges about weather or recipes, but full-throated truths, told by women who've seen too much and wear it like a second skin. I sit among them, not as someone being pitied, but as one of them. Last week, Violet came over with her niece. Young thing, about 25, looking for her first apartment. They asked if I knew anyone renting a room. I don't, I said. But if I did, I'd tell them to ask questions. Lots of them. About locks. About whose name is on the lease. About whether they're choosing a place to live or just a place to be kept. The girl blinked. Violet smiled like a woman who knew exactly what I meant. I walk every day now. Just around the block. Enough to feel the rhythm in my legs. Enough to remind my body it still belongs to me. I wear Harold's old scarf, even though it smells faintly of mothballs. I wear it because it makes me feel protected. Because some things don't need replacing. Gregory hasn't called. Neither has Sheila. A postcard came from Melissa, New York, some museum exhibit she visited with friends. No note beyond, "Hope you're well." I pinned it on the fridge anyway. Not because I forgive, not because I forget. But because it's mine now, too, a piece of what they left behind, and what I get to reshape. The letter I wrote to Gregory, the one I marked, "Only open if I'm gone," I kept. But I added another, shorter. I wrote it last week. If you ever come back, come as my son, not as my supervisor. If you can't do that, don't come at all. I placed it in the safe, next to the other. He may never read it, but it felt right to say it anyway. There's power in putting words to things, even if only you ever hear them. I've started planting bulbs for spring, daffodils mostly. They'll sleep through winter and push up through the thaw, not knowing who planted them or why. But they'll bloom anyway, like I have. Not out of revenge, not even out of pride, but because I refuse to vanish on someone else's schedule. This house was built to last. So was I. And if you're still reading this, if something in you felt what I felt, saw what I saw, then let me tell you something, woman to woman, stranger to stranger. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to stay. You don't have to surrender just because someone calls it help. Your life belongs to you, even when they look at you like you've already faded. So don't fade, don't fold. If you've still got breath, use it. If you've still got hands, hold your ground. And if this story sat with you, quietly, truly, then leave a word. Let someone know it mattered. Not for me. For you.